Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Come on, it's 10
Good
o'clock.
morning.
We're all awake.
Good
Look, first
morning.
of all, thank you all for being here for one of the early sessions on the last day of the book festival. But I'm really excited to moderate this session because I actually happen to serve as the chair of the Amistad Research Center, and I have the pleasure and honor of working with Kathe Hambrick on a very regular basis as she works to preserve Black history at Amistad. That is the title of our session today, and that is what we will be talking about, legacy in action. So I would like to start with Kathe, and let me say this just for background, guys. We have two people who know this area probably better than anyone. Kathe, in addition to being the executive director and CEO of the Amistad Research Center, is also the founder and CEO of River Rose African American Museum in Donaldsonville. She has been in this space for a very long time. Everyone at Tulane knows Carolyn Barber-Pierre. Carolyn has been at Tulane, yes, major shout out. She's been here for 41 years. Her actual title, she told me this morning, is Assistant VP of Student Affairs, Intercultural Life, but over those 41 years, she has numerous titles and she has impacted so many people at this university. So these are the experts, guys, so I'm so excited to hear what they have to say. So Kathe, let's just jump right into it. I think many people at Tulane have some idea of what the Amistad is, but can you tell the audience briefly, what is Amistad and basically what is it that we do?
The Amistad Research Center is the largest independent repository for Black history in the world. And when I say independent, I say that because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Many of you know about the Schomburg in New York, but the Schomburg is part of New York Public Libraries. Of course, Moreland Spingarn at Howard University, very large repository and archives, is a part of Howard University. But we are independent. We will have our 60th year anniversary next year in 2026. And
please come out and help us celebrate.
And yes, we will still be around.
That's right.
And yes, we will still be around for another 60 years beyond 2026. But we were started by the American Missionary Association and the United Church of Christ and Homeland Ministries. And those were religious entities that supported or helped to fund HBCUs. The Amistad started off at Fisk University. Then it moved to Dillard University. Then after moving to Dillard University, the collection, 900 plus collections, and 1,100 works of art by 19th and 20th century African-American artists found itself in the basement of the Mint at the end of Esplanade Boulevard. I recently found a letter, Kim, I think I told you this a couple of weeks ago, that Henry Louis Gates, at the beginning of his career, and Harvard University wanted the Amistad to move to Harvard. Then, just a week ago, I found another document in our archives where Ole Miss wanted the archives to go to Mississippi. Thanks to
I'll reserve judgment on that one.
thanks to former Mayor Dutch Morial and our former, emeritus board member Sybil Morial, they said absolutely not. The Amistad is not going to Mississippi, and it's not going to Harvard. And so arrangements were made for the Amistad to move to Tulane in 1987, and we are housed in Tulane, in Tilton Hall, which was Tulane's original library and then original law library.
Well, Kathe, that is a great background and that's a great history, but I'm gonna be honest with you, before I became affiliated with the Amistad, I don't know if I necessarily understood the difference between what an archive does versus what a library does versus kind of what a museum does. So since you're the expert, can you tell the audience really what are we versus being a library or a museum?
So most of us know, a library is where we go to check out books, read books, do research. Yes, libraries do also have film collections, but libraries primarily focus on books. Most of us know museums. Most of us know what museums are. It's the place where we go to see exhibits, usually art. I didn't realize until I became a museologist that botanical gardens are considered museums. So museums are educational institutions that primarily do research to exhibit for the public 3D objects. So you go to see objects that are in display cases. Usually it says, do not touch. You have curators that do the research and historians at museums, and yes, they do. Museums are most concerned about environmental controls that protect artifacts, objects. Archives, we deal primarily with paper, documents, manuscripts, books. Yes, we do have film. We do have objects in our collection. Well, Amistad, as the archives, we ended up with this fabulous art collection. But typically archives...
No, but tell them a little bit about Kathe and a little bit about Jacob Lawrence. That's important to know.
So as an archives, as I said, we have 15 million pages of manuscripts, documents, periodicals, books, 15 million pages of history that our archives my staff and our job is to protect it and also provide access to the public. The art collection includes the first series done by the artist, renowned artist, Harlem Renaissance artist Jacob Lawrence. It's known as the Toussaint L'Ouverture series. This is the only collection of Jacob Lawrence art that has never been separated. 41 original paintings telling the history of the Haitian Revolution. So we received a major grant from the Terra Arts Foundation last year for the conservation of these 41 original paintings.
And tell them where they will be displayed in 2026, Kathe.
So as a part of
she likes to build up to it and then hold you guys in suspense. I like to get right to it. Come on, Kathe.
That's the lawyer.
Give them the answer. Give them the answer.
So a part of the grant is that the opening exhibit will be in Paris. And
I'm going.
So you need to come and talk to me so you can find out what the date will be. And I cannot announce where that museum will be, but the Terra Arts Foundation sent me to Paris this past summer to choose and select the museum where this exhibit will open. I will tell you, they treated me like a queen in Paris. And they want this exhibit so badly to open in Paris. But what the curators told me in Paris, as they too, in France, are trying to understand and do better in the area of DEI, is that the stories of marginalized people in France have not been taught in their schools and has not been exhibited in their institutions and museums. So they wanted to know, well, Kathe, how did America help you, or how did you start that museum up in sugarcane country with the help of, like the American government? It's like, how in the world did you start this museum about slavery up there in Sugar? They knew all about the museum in Donaldsonville, all the way in Paris. And I said, well, America didn't really help me. They didn't really help me. I really didn't get permission from anybody to do this.
But they are helping you so much now, Kathe. That's really going on now. So,
right, as
Kathe,
we know.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because what you said kind of segues to Carolyn's role at Tulane for the last 41 years, because Carolyn is really an institution in and of herself. No, I'm not being funny, at Tulane University, and she has worked and helped so many students, so many alums. But I want you to talk a little bit about your history at Tulane. You've kind of seen it all. How have you seen this university change over the 41 years, particularly as it relates to students of color, faculty members of color, and that history?
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's a lot. You only have 2 minutes to say it, Carolyn.
I'm going to try to say this fast. I came to Tulane in '84, I think, as a director of special services. That told me that I needed to work with students of minority students, handicapped students, and commuter students. I spent 6 months doing listening to a whole host of folk and felt like I can't do this job. You need somebody for each one of these areas. So I, as a first-gen college student who went to a predominantly white institution, who knew the struggles of students of color in a place like Tulane, that I needed to really focus on this and give back. So when I got here, there was no office, there was no support, there were no black faculty on the undergraduate level. There were there was an African history kind of major that came and went away in the 70s. So it was about building. It was about me creating relationships with departments and offices, but mostly to find out what our students needed and to start building programs, services, and advocacy to make sure that they could take advantage of every resource Tulane had to offer, that they could thrive just like every other student. So I went about just building mentoring programs, building leadership development programs, working with various offices to get our students jobs, internships, to start bringing folks to campus, African American scholars and a whole host of folks through, you know, I worked with first the African American Congress of Tulane, which is now called the Black Student Union, who brought amazing speakers to this campus, from Cornel West to Malana Karenga to, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, to start not only educating the Tulane campus, but helping our Black and brown students understand their role in this society and their worth in this society. So over the years, you know, and then we started after the MLK holiday was recognized, that we couldn't just take a day off, that we needed to do something, but we didn't need to do that by ourselves. So we created a consortium between Tulane, Loyola, Xavier, and Dillard to not only bring those voices, to celebrate the accomplishments of African Americans, to remind us of our history. And then over the years, we've just continued to build. I mean, for me, I've seen tremendous growth from Dr. Kelly, Dr. Cowan, to President Fitz. There has been a commitment over the years to support not only people of color and other marginalized groups. And I've sat on every diversity DEI committee.
She sat on, led, participated in, rallied others. She's done it all.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that kind of segues into a question I want to ask both of you. Kathe started the conversation with making clear that we are an independent archive, but we do have a strong relationship with Tulane University. We're housed on Tulane's campus, and Tulane does support the Amistad. Why do both of you think that relationship is important? And Carolyn, since you have the floor, why don't you start and then turn it over to Kathe?
I mean, God, for our students, our faculty, our staff to have this kind of resource on our campus, you know, where you have original documents, you have amazing artifacts, you know, for those people who want to do research, who want to do archival study, that you have this kind of resource on campus, you know, it would behoove us to make that every department and office has some kind of relationship with the Amistad Research Center. I know we started a program called Conversations of Color that we did together, bringing different voices to campus.
Well, I want to talk about Conversations in Color for a minute. I'm going to segue into that because that has been a phenomenal joint partnership between Tulane and Amistad Research Center. So you and Kathe, talk about some of the major individuals in the community and the country that we have been able to bring down for Conversations in Color.
Well, I haven't done all the Conversations of Color because Amistad also partnered with a number of folk, Dillard and other organizations and institutions. But the ones we did on campus, bringing people like Charles Blow, bringing Reverend William Barber, bringing Mark Morial,
We brought, I don't know that Tulane was involved. Kathe, this was right before you started. We brought Nicole Hannah-Jones
Yes,
to
Nicole
talk about
Hannah-Jones.
Project 1619.
Yes.
We brought, and Kathe was our interim director when we did a program at Dillard
Right.
in August of 2023 to recognize the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington with Ronnie Moore
Right.
and Dottie Simmons. Tell the audience a little bit about that program, because that was revolutionary.
I had only been at the Amistad for 4 months, and it dawned on me that in August of 2023, that we were approaching the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. And I said, my goodness, what are we doing in Louisiana? Are we doing something? What's New Orleans doing? 60th years of the March on Washington. And so I knew Ronnie Moore from the work that I had done with him about his life being the field secretary for CORE Louisiana. And so when I called Ronnie, I said, Ronnie, tell us what happened. Where were you in that summer of 1963 leading up to the March on Washington? Did you go? And then he said, oh, Kathe, you have to talk to Dodie. And so we then partnered with Dr. Ishmael's class at Dillard on social justice and said, okay, we need to get students in here to hear students, young people, this next generation coming behind us. How many of these civil rights icons are still living? Mm-hmm. You know, students need to hear directly from them. So we did the program that was at Dillard.
That's amazing.
Honoring both Dodie and Ronnie, and invited the public and students to come and hear from them firsthand.
And what's critical about that program that Kathe put together at Dillard was the title, to me, really says it all, particularly with where we are now. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
That was the title of the program. So we brought in these two civil rights icons who at the ages of 15, 16, 17, and 18 took on the mantle of fighting for civil rights for all of us. And part of what we've tried to do is push that mantle and pay it forward to young people, even young people on this campus. Okay, where are we going? What are you gonna do to keep this struggle moving forward in a progressive way? And I want both of you to discuss what is our interaction with students on Tulane's campus? How does Amistad interact with Tulane students, and what can we do basically to improve that relationship?
Well, you know, President Fitz asked me at the first meeting that I had with him within the first year that I was here. He invited me over to ask how Amistad was doing and who actually comes there. He said, who actually comes to the Amistad? And I said, well, you know, the same people who visit special collections on the other side of campus and the library here on campus. It's people who want to do research. What has amazed me is to see the numbers of teachers throughout the schools here in New Orleans, charter schools and schools, middle schools and high schools, that bring students to the Amistad. I mean, what teacher brings students to teach them how to use primary source documents?
Right. Right.
I mean,
But
it's
what teacher knows how to use primary source
right.
documents
Exactly.
these days? That's my question.
So there are, I want to say to you, you know, with all of the complaints and problems that we talk about in our school system, I want to tell you there are good teachers out there.
There are
And
great
there
teachers
are
out there.
great teachers out there.
Great teachers out there.
Kim, your mother was a teacher. I have teachers who were in the New Orleans public school system who are part of my life. I think we need to praise these teachers and try to support them as much as we can. We're waiting right now for the approval of a grant where we're going to train 6th through 12th graders, and it's called the Junior Archivist Program. So, you know, they said, well, you can't use certain language when you're applying for these grants. Well, how in the world can the Amistad, by name of who we are, how are we not, am I supposed to not use the word freedom? Can I not say the word freedom? Can I not teach about Native American orphans who are part of our collection? Can I not teach about Japanese Americans who were held on the West Coast, who we have a photo collection? So I said, what we will do, we're gonna rewrite this grant because they kicked it back to us. We're gonna rewrite this grant and we're gonna focus on training the next generation of archivists. Just so happens that the material that they will be learning from are the primary source documents that are part of the Amistad collection that includes the American Committee on Africa, 700 boxes from the organization known as ACOA. They will be learning from our collection another 700 plus boxes from an organization called the FSC, the Federal Southern Cooperatives. This was community organizations in 5 states in the South, Black farmers and Black landowners, where they organized themselves to protect the farmlands in 5 states. We have those financial records. We have the maps of these rural communities from Epps, Alabama, all the way to, some small towns in Louisiana. I thought I knew every small town in rural Louisiana. But places, landowners, you don't know if your family member owned land in one of these small towns. You may know that one of your relatives, your grandparents, aunts, and uncles owned land, but you have no access to the records in the courthouse that can prove that they purchased this property. We have those documents with their names, receipts from their purchases, with the maps. And so these records will be used to train the next generation of archivists, young people, 6th through 12th graders, who will learn how to do the job that I do now and that my staff does. I say that archivists are scientists.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, they called it library science. How many of you have librarians in your family? Okay, we call them librarians, but they get degrees in library science. It's a science to protecting this paper. We are, if you think in terms of those people who protected the papyrus in the Library of Alexandria, Egypt, by the way, that happens to be in Africa.
Yep. Yep.
If you think about the people who protected the books in Timbuktu, which also happens to be in Africa.
Right.
I am the first generation of Black museum curators. My friends at the Smithsonian right now are sitting on pins and needles. I'm the first generation of Black curators. I'm not the first generation of Black archivists or librarians, but it is our responsibility, your responsibility, to support the Amistad so that we can train the next generation of scientists who will protect the truth. The truth is held in the stacks of the Amistad.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. You know,
And guys, I want to recognize, we spoke about Dutch and Sybil Moriel before Jacques Moriel walked in. I want to recognize Jacques Moriel from the Moriel family.
yes.
The family has been key, critical, and significant to the fact that Amistad's doors are still open.
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Moriel worked on the board really up until the last. She supported what we did. She fought for Amistad really up until her last illness. Mrs. Moriel is actually the reason I'm on the board. Mrs. Moriel is actually the reason I'm the chair of the board. No, I'll tell you the story really quickly. She called me out the blue one day, asked me, Kim, can I meet with you? I said, yes, ma'am, of course. Where would you like to meet? She said, can you come to my house for coffee? Always very gracious. And me being the lawyer, of course, I said, I always want to be prepared for a meeting. So I said, Mrs. Moriel, can you tell me what the purpose of the meeting is so I can make sure I'm prepared? No, I'll tell you when you get here. So, yes, ma'am. I go to Mrs. Moriel's house, and Mrs. Moriel says, you're going to be chair of the Amistad Research Center. So that's how I ended up as chair of the Amistad Research Center. But I wanted to recognize Jacques because this line or this lineage of connection to who we are and what we do goes on, and that's what Kathe is talking about as it relates to creating the next generation of archivists. And I want to turn it over to Carolyn to talk about that from a standpoint of Tulane and Tulane students, how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and I remember like the Black Lives movement, and we partnered together, I think, to do Alicia Garza and Elizabeth Alexander, because our students need to understand what student activism is. We got brilliant young people, but understanding history is something that I think we need to always remind them of. Because if you don't know where you've come from, you damn sure don't know where you're going. And to be able to bring the voices, like the first, the Amistad Center has all of these records of all these civil rights activists. So if you're going to study how to do this work, you need to study in a place that has all those resources.
Yes,
and it's just amazing. I go over there and I'm always amazed at what I find that I never knew that was in that center.
But I also want both of y'all to talk about, because, we tend to focus on the civil rights activists, and we tend to focus on, Ernest Dutch Moriel and Revis Artigue and all of the pillars of this community who fought for rights for everyone. But I also want to go back, Kathe and Carolyn, and talk about the cultural impact of what we have at the Amistad, because this is everything. This is all encompassing. It's not just about fighting for civil rights, but we have a lot of culture of this country at Amistad. And I want you guys to talk about that a little bit.
Well, we have the world's only hip hop and bounce collection.
Now that should be interesting to the kids.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
For
So
sure.
that will definitely be in the forefront of our junior archivist training program. We also have America's largest black opera collection. We have black
Now,
theater.
stop there.
Yes.
There is black opera. I mean, because some people are looking like, oh, wait, really? There is black opera. Keep going.
So we also have a black theater collection. And Harold Sylvester, who was the first black basketball player and first black athletic
scholarship recipient
At
Tulane University, is on our board of directors. And so I have a call planned with Harold on this Thursday with his Black Broadway friends and Black Hollywood friends who want to support the Amistad when they found out that we have the collection of Douglas Turner Ward,
Yes.
who is the founder of the Negro Ensemble Company that was the first Black Broadway theater company. Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
There is not a Black actor, actress, not one of them who did not go through the school of theater and training of Douglas Turner Ward, who was born in Burnside, Louisiana, but he claims New Orleans as his home before he left.
And talk about Tom Dent.
Tom Dent, we have the Tom Dent collection of papers. We have the Moriel family papers, and I see Monique here. I'm sorry, Julie. I see Julie here.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else here? Julie and Jock. But anyway, we have the Moriel family papers, you know.
I want you to go back with Tom Dent and talk about that history of who Tom Dent's father.
Tom Dent's father was Albert Dent, who was also the president of Dillard University.
So all this is full circle. This is full circle.
And his mother, I didn't realize this, his mother, oh gosh, her first name, Cunningham Dent, was the founder of Ebony Fashion Fair.
Yes.
Do you guys remember Ebony
Yes.
Fashion? I don't know.
Yeah.
Those of you
Ebony
who have
Fashion
gray hair,
Fair.
yes.
Exactly.
You know, the first, I guess it was our first real exposure to the runway with Black models. She was the founder of that. That was Albert Dent's wife. We hold their family
And this
papers.
is when Black models could not be on the runway for white designers. So I want to be very clear about that. And I also want to recognize and acknowledge one of our board members, Dr. Roseanne Adderley, who is in the history department at Tulane University, has been on the board for a number of years, and she helps keep us straight on facts and real history. And I've got to say this, and I'm going to turn it back to Carolyn. What's going on now is a lot of discussion that's not grounded in facts. They're not grounded in facts. We focus on facts, good facts, bad facts, whatever, but they are facts. That's what real history is about. Dr. Adderley helps keep us grounded in facts and the history.
Right.
Keep going.
It is amazing to see what is in the Amistad Center, and it has inspired me to encourage our students not only to use the resources that are in the Amistad, but it has also inspired us to do other things, like take students abroad, you know, and understand those different worldviews and understanding those histories, to bring specific speakers to campus, to create programs that look at that history. You know, again, I can't emphasize anymore the importance of knowing who you are, where you come from, when we are told that we are less than, that we did not have the amazing kings and queens that we've come from. So understanding, understanding that history, and not just for us, for all students, is important.
But how do we, I'm glad you said that, because that was actually going to be my next segue, Carolyn.
Right.
One of the things that, I don't want to say concerns me, but concerns me as someone who's in their 60s now, and I deal with college students a lot. I'm honored to serve on Tulane's board. I'm honored to serve on Dillard's board. I deal with young people a lot. Sometimes I feel that they don't quite get why it's so important to be engaged and also to have your mindset expanded, even with viewpoints you don't agree with, because that's what seems to be going on now. If we don't like a particular viewpoint, I notice when you guys do the introductions for the book fest, you make it clear you're not going to let anybody drown out the speaker just because you don't like the viewpoint. if you want to have a great liberal arts education, you've got to be exposed to different viewpoints. So Carolyn, you work with students all day, every day. What can we do as older people to help them understand how important it is to kind of expand your worldview?
Hey, that is my challenge.
It is.
Because young people, there's so much information overload. They have this I call it the new nipple, where they can't function, but they believe everything they read, But college is the time where you come and you listen to all kinds of views, whether you agree with it or not, but giving students the opportunity to hear and maybe think and maybe process, hey, maybe what I've learned may not be totally
all correct.
Right.
Totally
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
So I think it opens the mind to understanding, all kinds of things, but also the connection of our humanity. I mean, obviously, there's so many people that I would disagree with, but understanding where they're coming from gives me a perspective of what I need to do, either to reinforce my values or to work with figuring out a way that we understand and work together. Because let's face it, we can't live on an island. We can't live in our own little communities and think that the world is going to go on. We have got to depend on each other.
Absolutely.
As we move forward. And there's a lot of attacks right now on DEI. But hey, I'm old school. I'm going to continue to provide the services and support that allow our students to feel heard and appreciated and included, in this great society. I will always be an advocate for free speech, because I think it's important.
Well, that's
People
one of the
have got
constitutional
to
principles
hear.
on which we're founded. But I want to flip what you said, Carolyn, and turn it over to Kathe. Kathe, I keep asking Carolyn, what can Tulane do more? What can she do more to engage Tulane students in what we do? What's the challenge on us at Amistad Research Center to not just engage Tulane students, but engage Dillard students and Xavier students and Loyola students and Holy Cross students and SUNO students and UNO students in what it is we have available to them to broaden their educational base? What do we need to do better?
I think that we need to teach young people that we are not in competition with each other. This is not about Dillard being against Xavier. This is not about Tulane being against UNO and about being against LSU, not just with the universities and colleges, that high schools even within our city. We need to show an alliance, and at this time, more importantly than ever, the Amistad and people who believe in the work that we do, and the people like you who are in this room, we need friends and allies. And if we can't get on the same page, literally, if we can't be on the same page and find partnerships and collaborations where we bring these students from the universities and colleges and high schools, bring them together. Everything is not about a competition against one, pitting one against the other.
Exactly.
We need to bring them. We have a document, and I think it's from the FSC collection, and it's community organizing. And then I've looked at the history of freedom schools, where during the civil rights movement, you had to teach people how to take that literacy test to go vote.
Right.
Do you know how many young people can't read? It's about illiteracy. We have to defeat illiteracy and ignorance, because I think what we're seeing in Washington right now is that we're being run by an idiocracy. I mean, I learned about Black history at home. That's why the Amistad is partnering with Carolyn and her department to teach and do genealogy workshops.
Exactly.
If your children and your grandchildren don't know who their grandmother and grandfather were from Opelousas or Donaldsonville or Vacherie, then how can they learn about world history if they don't even know their own history right in their
I'm
own
glad you
family?
said that, Kathe. That's funny. That ties in. I bumped into, as I was ending lunch, late lunch yesterday before I came back to the book festival, bumped into a friend who introduced me to her friend who was visiting, who's a former news reporter. And I told that friend that I graduated from UVA Law School. And she started talking about her family's history in Charlottesville. She was Caucasian. She was able to go all the way back to the 1700s in tracing her family's line. The friend who introduced us, who was African American like myself, we looked at each other and said, we can't do that. We can't do that. That is impossible for us to do. So what's important is this isn't just about black folks, guys.
Right.
This isn't just about civil rights. This is about who we are as a nation, who we purport to be as a nation, and more importantly, who we are going to be as a nation. So to Kathe and Carolyn's point about all of us coming together, that's critical. I can't believe Kathe forgot to brag about us when she talked about library science. Amistad, because this is important for you to know. Amistad in 2022 was the recipient of the IMLS National Medal of Honor, Institute of Museum and Library Services. I flew up to DC for us to accept that award. So we're not just making this stuff up, guys. We're not just concocting stuff. This is real, this is scientific, this is fact-based. So we have 3 minutes. I want both of you to end by saying, where do we go from here?
How do we, as Tulane University, engage the Amistad Center from the time students come on campus as freshmen to the time they graduate? Are we creating orientation programs that bring all of our students in to the center and understand how to take advantage of those resources? Do we teach students how to do primary source research in a place that has that kind of collection? How are we encouraging folks who want to do history, who want to do archival studies? You know, the Amistad Center has internships, has all kinds of opportunities for students to get that kind of knowledge. So I think it behooves the institution and our faculty and our administrators to think critically of how we engage when you have such a resource on campus. And other institutions would kill to have this kind of archive on their campus. We've got to figure out a way that we have more of our students, more of our faculty utilizing and advertising and really supporting the efforts of the Amistad Center.
Thank you, Carolyn. And you have the last, well, I might have the last word, but you have the second to last word, Kathe.
Yeah, so, one of the things that Kim and the board said to me when they hired me, they said, Kathe, we know all about you and the work that you do in the museum world. And they said, museums get the big sexy. They have the galleries, they get to do the receptions and the parties and the galas, and they show off what's in their collection, and that's what gets the public excited, even with programming. I want to say thank you to Tulane University. We're in the original law library building that has a halon gas system. We are one of 3 archives in the entire country that has halon gas. That means if a fire happens, the oxygen will be taken out of the room and there won't be water sprinklers that wet everything. I mean, that's really a big deal.
30 seconds.
But I do want to say, what can Tulane do? I have asked the university, and I appeal to you, we need our own exhibit space. There is no, you've heard me say, we have 900 plus collections, 15 million pages of documents. Museums get loaned from us all the time. We have Mary McLeod Bethune's diary at the Smithsonian right now. I was in Washington, D.C. at the National Gallery of Art last week, and Elizabeth Cabot, we had 14 items from Elizabeth Cabot. We need our own exhibit space so that we can tell our stories right here in New Orleans. We need that real estate where we can have our own gift shop, our own programs, more than just a reading room. Right now, we have 14
Kathe?
members of our staff.
Kathe,
And I turn it back over to the board.
thank you. Guys, this has been a phenomenal discussion. We have the giants in the field, Carolyn Barber-Pierre, Tulane University. We have Kathe Hambrick, founder, CEO of River Rose Museum, as well as the CEO of the Amistad Research Center. Thank you for all being here this morning. Thank you for filling the room. Thank you for supporting us, and we expect to see you all at the Amistad. Thank you for Tulane Book Festival.